Hey everybody, this is a bit of advice. I'm Joshua Birdsell, your show host from Alabama, and today we're speaking with Bob Burg. Dennis started a bit of advice on air several months ago, and we now have over 100,000 likes on Facebook, and we are also on Twitch. And after the live feed, this video will be up on our page on a bitofadvice.org. Also, check out our page yesplaceradio.org, and we are going to be on YouTube as well after the show. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a little bit of information about Bob, and Bob can correct me if I'm wrong on anything. So Bob Burg speaks all over the world on topics related to the Go-Giver, as well as what he calls genuine influence. While his total book sales number well over 1 million copies, his and John David Mann's original book has itself sold over 700,000 copies and has spurred an international movement. In their best-selling business parable, The Go-Giver, and then their follow-up, The Go-Giver Leader, Bob Burg and John David Mann challenged the conventional wisdom about success. Now they're back with a new, equally compelling story about the power of genuine influence in business and beyond. The Go-Giver Influencer might just be their most important book of all. So what is influence? We hear the word a lot, but what are we actually talking about, Bob?
Yeah, we do hear the word a lot, Joshua, and it's sort of to describe it and define it. There's really, I think, two levels. One is a very basic level, and that's simply the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within the context of a specific goal. That's influence. That's the definition of influence. I don't believe that is the substance of influence or the essence of influence. The essence of influence is pull as opposed to push.
Right.
We've often heard the saying, how far can you push a rope? And the answer is not very far, at least not very fast or very effectively, which is why great influencers don't push. So really what pull is, and what we mean by this, is it's an attraction. Great influencers attract people to themselves first, and only then to their ideas. And the greatest influencers do this through discovering the needs, the wants, and the desires of the other person.
Right. We got a lot of people joining us right now. I want to say thank you, everybody, for joining us. I see you, Taylor Estes. I see you, Heather, Cody, Edith, Robbie. I'm thankful for you joining us. Stay tuned. We got a lot of good questions and a lot of good things. If you like to ask a question, just ask a question right here. We can see it and we can ask. All right, so I'm gonna go on to the next question real quick, Bob. Bob, can we go through the 5 secrets of genuine influence real quick? I see the first one is master your emotions, and I also want to know about the seatbelt principle of emotions. So this should give you the floor for a second.
Well, it all begins with mastering your emotions, because it's only when we're in control of ourselves and control of our emotions that we're even in a position to be able to take a potentially negative situation or person and turn it into a win for everyone involved. We know this, yet how often do we as human beings allow what someone else says or does to kind of push our emotional hot buttons, and we cause we cause ourselves to become frustrated or helpless feeling or angry, right? And we say or we do something that's totally counterproductive. Right. Again, we know this, but we do it anyway. Why? Well, because we're human beings, and it's how we're built, right? Human beings are emotional creatures. We'd like to think we're logical, but to a certain extent we are, but we're pretty emotion driven. We make major decisions based on emotion. We back up those emotional decisions with logic. We rationalize.
That's right.
Which, if you break up the word rationalize, Joshua, it simply means we tell ourselves rational lies. Okay? and so what we need to do is not try and deny our emotions, not try and forego them. First, that wouldn't be logical. Secondly, it's not necessary. Emotions are a great part of life. They bring us joy. They make life worth living.
Right.
So, no, we don't need to forego them, but we do need to make sure we're their master, not, and, you know what I'm saying? Right. And that we're controlling them. We're mastering them as opposed to they mastering us. Or, as one of my great friends, Dante Scumaci, says, take your emotions along for the ride, but make sure you are driving the car. In other words, you're in the driver's seat.
Right.
Your emotions are in the passenger seat, seatbelt buckled, safely tucked in. Because as one of the characters in the story in the Go-Giver Influencer says, when you allow your emotions to drive the car, you're really at the mercy of a drunk driver. Right. So if we want to make decisions in our life that are going to have the best chances of the outcomes we desire, and there's never any guarantees, but we can certainly increase the odds, it's when we act out of logic, not emotion. We understand the emotions are there, and that's okay.
Exactly.
We can even listen to them, but we don't take action on emotions. We take action on logic.
Well, it's like I always say, sometimes you got to listen to, what you think is right. And a lot of times we sit around and we're influenced by somebody that has a negative outlook on life, or they're just aggravated, or they have something going on in their life, and we take that advice from them. That's why I always say, never take advice from a bitter heart, because that advice is not going to be any good. It might even set you back, and it's going to,
that's a great point.
It's going to cause a lot of anger inside of you. So that's what kind of reminded me of what you're saying here. Okay, so I'm going to go on with the next one. The second one is a step into the other person's shoe. I see that you and John use a somewhat odd suggestion, which is to listen with the back of your neck. What in the world do you mean by that?
Well, when we say step into the other person's shoes, it's a very well-known saying, and it sounds kind of easy, but when you think about it, most of us have different size feet. So we can't necessarily step in the other person's shoes. Right. And what we mean by that is we all come at the world from different sets of beliefs. We see the world differently. We see things differently. And most conflict is a matter of two or more people seeing the same basic thing from different points of view.
Right.
So we need to be able to step into their world. We need to be able to understand their thought processes, even if we don't agree with them. We need to understand, how do we do that? Well, that, and we ask questions.
Right.
And when we ask these questions, we do this so that we can discover, and as entrepreneurs, which most of your viewers and listeners are, they're entrepreneurs. You're salespeople, okay? And you may not want to think you are, but you are. You need to sell the service that you represent.
Right.
And selling is basically defined as discovering what the other person wants, needs, or desires, and helping them to get it.
So you want to step into their shoes and basically think about what their needs are and what their situation is right at hand, so that you can sell them the product, is basically what you're saying, right?
Sure. Well, remember, they're buying for their reasons, not for our reasons.
Right, exactly.
And we may even think that the product has some great benefits to it that everybody would love, but that's not necessarily how the other person sees it, right? They see benefits in it that you may not even be thinking of, or you may not think is important because they're not important to you, but they'd be important to them. So you've got to ask questions and listen. And this is the key. And as one of the mentors in the story told his protege, don't just listen with your ears. That's surface listening. That's the kind of listening that we do so that we can come back with something, right? We're listening just long enough that we can speak. No, listen with your eyes. Listen with your posture. Listen, he said, with the back of your neck. And what he meant by that was to put your entire being into listening. It's very Zen-like. You're actually feeling that from the back of your neck. And what happens is two things. One is you're really engaging with this person, and you learn more. And when you have more knowledge, you're in a much better position than you were before. Secondly, when you listen like that to someone, they feel heard.
Right. It's almost like the expression, your hair standing up on the back of your neck, on how important that is. It's almost like that expression. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Okay, so the third step is set the frame. Explain the secret.
Well, a frame is the foundation from which everything else evolves. Okay, I often use an example of a perfect frame that I saw when I was in a Dunkin' Donuts restaurant once. There was a little boy, a little toddler, about 2.5 years old, and he was running around. And his parents called him over back to the table. So he starts to walk over, and he falls. He slips on the floor. Now, he wasn't hurt, but he was shocked, you could tell. Yeah. So he looks at his parents in order to get their interpretation of the event. Okay, in other words, what happened. He wanted to know, what happens next. Now, I really believe that had the parents gotten upset and gotten panicky and scared and run over and, oh no, are you okay? I think he would have started to cry.
Yeah.
But the parents handled it just beautifully. They walked over quickly but very calmly. They had smiles on their face. They began to laugh and applaud and, oh, that looked like so much fun. What a good trick. And the little boy began to laugh.
Right.
What the parents did is they set a productive frame from which he could operate. When you set the proper frame, you're 80% of the way there because everything's operating from that premise. Now, this could be you can set a frame by smiling when you meet someone or a good handshake and looking them in the eye. There's many ways to set a frame. What we also need to do, though, Joshua, is be ready to reset someone else's negative frame.
Okay.
And so, in other words, we don't want to buy into their frame. Let's say, for example, you're about to do a presentation for a new prospective customer. Okay. And she is seems kind of angry or seems kind of defensive. Now, you never know. She may have had a bad experience with a salesperson or may have, who knows what's going on in that person's world. But if you buy into her frame, then you become defensive. Right. And you operate out of a this person against that person type of thing. No. So let's reframe it. We might say to her something like, Mary, while we've been able to help a lot of people with this product, whether or not it's the right solution for you, we simply can't know without exploring deeper and determining whether it meets your needs. Right. So please know that this conversation is for both of us to discover that, and if it does, great. If not, that's okay too.
Right.
Boom. So you've taken this from two adversaries into one of two allies, both seeking a good solution.
That makes perfect sense. Awesome. Yeah. Okay, so fourth is communicate with tact and empathy. Walk us through this secret.
Well, my dad has always defined tact as the language of strength. And I've always enjoyed that definition because I think it takes a strong person to be tactful. It means that you've controlled your emotions. It means you've thought you've put yourself in their shoes. It means you've asked yourself, how is what I'm about to say, how is it going to affect this person? Is it going to build them or is it going to hurt them? Is it going to encourage or is it going to discourage? How's this person going to feel? Tact is a way of being able to correct someone, to critique someone, dare I say constructively criticize someone. Not that we ever want to do this, but we're talking about the real world. Right. And sometimes we have to. We have to be able to help someone see a better or a different way of doing something.
There's a lot of different ways to do it.
Yeah, tact allows us to do this in such a way that not only is the person not defensive toward us and resistant to our ideas, but they're open to us and they're much more accepting of our ideas. And that's what tact really allows us to do. Empathy, which is by definition the identification with or vicarious experiencing of another's feelings. Right. Which sounds good on paper, but again, we can't necessarily know how they feel. We don't necessarily understand how they feel.
We haven't been through what they've been through.
Yeah, we haven't been in their position necessarily, and
we're trying.
But here's what we can do. We can understand that they are feeling something. Right. And that this something is distressful to them, and we can communicate that we understand that and that we're there to help them through that. Right. And tact and empathy really work together because when we have that feeling of caring about this other person and what they're going through, we're naturally going to speak and communicate in a much more tactful way. Right.
That makes sense. So it's almost like all the secrets work together.
Exactly.
That's what I'm seeing so far. So we're on the last one. So, and lastly, number 5 is let go of having to be right. So this one be a tough one for, I think, a lot of people that I know. And so does this mean you really don't care?
No, it sounds like that, doesn't it? And yet, no, not at all. You care. You want to be right. You will prepare yourself to be right. You'll do. What it means is you let go of having to be right. In other words, you let go of the attachment to having to be right. Now, this sounds like it would make you less influential, but it actually makes you much more influential for 2 reasons. One, When you let go of having to be right, you're able to go into what we call learner's mode. You've probably come up against people, Joshua, that just cannot admit they're wrong or cannot even be wrong, cannot admit
Right.
to themselves.
Right.
I mean, they have an idea, okay, and they are going to, no matter how logically it's proven incorrect, they're not going to budge. In fact, what they do is they fall victim to what's called confirmation bias. And confirmation bias is exactly what it sounds like. It means when you hear or read or come across some new information that confirms your already held beliefs or biases, you accept it.
Right.
When you don't, when it's something that contradicts your already held beliefs or biases, you ignore it. Well, what happens is you can't grow. You can't learn anything that way. You stay exactly where you are.
Right.
But when you can let go of having to be right and you're really willing to learn, it means you can explore different information. Now, that doesn't mean you have to agree with that other thing, but you're open to the idea.
Right,
so this does two things. One is it equips you with more knowledge.
Right.
Secondly, this other person, they understand that they're dealing with someone who's not looking to defeat them or overcome them or make them wrong. They're dealing with someone who's seeking truth.
Right.
And they're much more willing to go with that same way of being.
Exactly. It's kind of like it's not really about being indecisive or undecided. It's just being open. Open to new things, open to saying, well, anything's possible, because I like to say that a lot, anything's possible, anything can happen. You just gotta stay, working and stay doing what you like to do and what you enjoy and what your passion is. And if you stay into that, you can't help but be successful because it's not always about the money, And so that leads me to the next question. So you say there is one sentence that is guaranteed to prevent misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Sounds too good to be true.
Okay, so we were talking about the team leader saying as soon as possible, and different people didn't have the project in. I think that one person had it in, two people didn't. So what happened was when we go through it, we find out that there's 4 different people, all with different definitions of as soon as possible. The sentence, what you would ask is, you'd say, Dave or Mary, whoever the team leader is, just for my own clarification, a company where as soon as possible, is there a specific day or time you're thinking of? And then that person would say, yes, Wednesday afternoon, 5 o'clock. That's the deadline. Okay. So whenever you want to make sure that there's not a misunderstanding, you never assume that the other person knows what you mean by a certain term, and you never assume that you understand what they mean by a certain term because they don't and you don't. Right. So you simply ask the person to clarify. Mary, when you say so-and-so, whatever the word is, and then depending upon what it is there a specific, or did you mean, or what exactly did you mean? Or just for my own clarification, what I'm saying?
I think text, that happens to me all the time in text. Somebody will text me something and I'm like, why would they say that? And then when I see them in person, I'll be like, why'd you say that? They're like, oh, I didn't mean it like that. I meant it like this. So I think that happens a lot.
Texting and online makes it even more difficult
because there's no personality behind what you're saying.
Right. So that's why it's even more important with text and email and so forth to ask clarifying questions. So important. If you want to avoid miscommunication, ask questions. Do not assume that you know what they mean or they know what you mean. I'm telling you, it's the biggest. If you start getting in the habit of doing that, and just remember, when you ask them to clarify, always do it with tact. Always company where as soon as possible. What do you mean that, right? It's always, just for my own clarification or so I don't misunderstand. And company where I'm telling you, you'll just have success with people on a level you can't imagine.
That's awesome. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the question I started with. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
My cards mixed up. So you say there is one sentence, and you said that one for sure. So that clarified that, so everybody's on the same page. We also have somebody that wants to know your a quick bio. So I'll give you the floor at the end of this that you can do that. And that's so Lori, at the end of this, he'll be able to explain his bio one more time. So you say there's one motivating factor shared by every single person on Earth. And like I said, so it sounds good to be true. Like, what is it?
Well, Yeah. I learned this from one of my mentors, Harry Brown, who was just a brilliant man with a great understanding of and respect for human nature. He didn't try to change human nature. He worked within human nature. And he did it in a very kind, respectful way, a very successful person. What Harry says is this, that everyone seeks happiness. Okay, now happiness defined as the mental feeling of well-being. Now, in every other way, Harry says, in every other way, people are individuals and people are different. But as human beings, it's the way we're built. Everyone seeks happiness. Every decision someone makes is aimed at bringing them happiness. Now, not every action brings happiness. Individuals make mistakes, but every act is aimed at bringing happiness. But there's also two other points that go with this. Number two, happiness is relative. In other words, different people experience happiness different ways. So we play as human beings, we all place different values on different things. So what might make one person very happy might make another person miserable or might have no effect at all. Okay?
Exactly.
And then third, resources are limited. Now, that's not to be confused with a lack mentality. Not at all. We live in a very abundant universe. But individually, we all have a limited amount of time, a limited amount of energy, a limited amount of money, a limited amount of knowledge, right? So we constantly have to make choices. So every decision someone makes, that you make, that I make, that any other person makes, will always be based on whether they believe it will bring them closer to happiness, based on how they understand happiness, and based on the choices the options they believe they have. When you understand this, and not fight it, but understand this, you'll never again have to wonder why someone didn't take a particular action, even one that you thought they should take.
Right.
They did it based on that criteria.
Right. And so everybody's motives are not always what you think.
Exactly. You just said it beautifully. Absolutely.
That's I totally get that, and I got to respect that, man. Because a lot of people, it's good to bring awareness to that, Because sometimes people are just misunderstood, Sometimes people think that somebody's so happy and and then you get in a room with them by themselves, and they're like the most depressed person that you've ever seen, And it's like, wow, like I didn't see that coming, So it's good to have, the system like you're saying, where how to basically put yourself in their shoes and be able to understand their placement and what they're saying. I think that's very important. Understanding and communication, that's in relationships, friendships, marriages, all that is very important. Communication is key, for a team to be successful. So we have the gold nugget, which is the final question, and it is, what would you say is the most important advice on life that you have learned that you can give for a young and upcoming writer?
For an upcoming writer?
Yes, sir.
Well, develop an area of expertise that you feel very comfortable sharing with others, that you have a desire to share with others. And then understand that writing is just one part of the process. If you want to be published, you need to know how to go through that process of finding an agent and being able to write the inquiry letters and the proposals, how to build your platform, how to market your book, how to sell your book. Since the Go-Giver first came out 10 years ago, I still do probably 2 or 3 interviews a day. I'm constantly promoting the book. Okay,
that's
the
awesome.
New one. Well, thank you, but that's part of the it's part of the process.
Yeah, that's right.
It's an entrepreneurial venture in itself. So now that the new book, the Go-Giver Inluencer, has just come out, I'm going to be doing that constantly, and because that's part of the process.
That's right.
So I think it's understanding that if you want to write a book and you want that book to to go somewhere,
right,
you need to approach it as a business in and of itself.
Exactly. You got to go into it, thinking of everything that you can think of. But a lot of people don't know the knowledge that you've experienced over time.
Unfortunately,
that's why it's so important to have shows like what we have here, man. I really enjoy, you sharing this.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Joshua. And fortunately, there's pretty much information out there on anything that someone wants to do. So, regardless of what it is, seek out and find the information.
They had to spend the time on their own and go out there and seek it. Okay, so we're getting very close to the end of our show, and I wanted to know if you can tell us your information so that we can reach you if we need your help or if we can use your services, get your book, where can we get your book at, things of that nature.
Best place to go is thegogiver.com without the hyphen. It's just thegogiver.com. And on that page, you can click on the purple book, the Go-Giver Influencer. It will take you to a page where you can get 2 chapters to read first if you'd like to see if you like it before clicking through. You can check out our podcast and connect with me on social media. So, visit thegogiver.com, hang out, and have some fun.
Awesome. Yeah, I've seen that you have, is this the 4th one in the series, number 4, the 4th book? Yes, I've seen that. So it's a series of books. It's not just one book that you just wrote. It's actually a series.
Yeah, but they all stand alone. They all
different stories.
Yeah, they're all set in the same fictional town, and every so often there's characters that come back. So people who've read them from the beginning, from the Go-Giver, will see certain things. But no, you could start with any one of them and work your way backwards, or just read 1 or 2, and that's fine.
Awesome. Well, I thank you so much for your time today, Bob, and I've really enjoyed this show. Hey, we had a little bit of technical difficulties in the middle. I think we'll get it worked out.
That happens. That happens. Not a biggie. In the big scheme of things, that's small stuff.
That's very true, man. Well, thank you so much for your time. We're going to be signing off now, and thank you, man. I just can't stress. It's an honor to be in front of you, speaking to you right now. So everybody out there that's listening, thank you. Everybody have a good day, and I'll see you next week at 5:30 on Tuesday for another A Bit of Advice, and we'll have another special guest. Thank you.